This really pisses me off to no end.
Hello lovelies, here again to scream into the void in the vain hope of reaching someone and getting them to change some of their behaviour. But it seems unlikely for a huge number of reasons, but mostly the self-bubbling effect, the echo chamber effect that most people have planted themselves into. We need to talk about the Day for Freedom. In some ways a massive success, in other ways a massive failure. It was, by all accounts, a pretty damn big rally, which is, I think, a good thing that many people will turn out for the sake of freedom of speech. On the downside, some people who were there don't seem to understand the concept of freedom of speech and that it might apply to people other than them, and of course what reporting there was in the mainstream media really portrayed it as some sort of far-right rally, which I don't really think it was. I think there's a self-selection problem with it that makes it easier for them to pass it off as some sort of far-right rally, which it really wasn't. The big problem was around Ali Dawah. Now, details and so on are still coming out about this, that Tim Pool has pretty much covered that what Tommy Robinson was saying isn't true. It's probably what Tommy Robinson wants to believe. It may even be what Tommy Robinson actually believes. But what appears to have happened is that Ali Dawah, who is against free speech, is an Islamist. I mean, the clue's in the name, really. He came and was supposed to speak, but had missed the security briefings. They decided not to let him in, and he's painting this as discrimination and so on, and there was a scuffle. So some combination of bureaucracy and hostility in at least a segment of the crowd prevented Ali Dawah from speaking. But I think it was really important that Ali Dawah be allowed to speak, even if he was speaking against the event, even if his views are repugnant. I mean, that's kind of the point, to expose yourself to other points of view, even points of view that want to stifle free expression. A lot of the people here in the event felt that they were being suppressed and so on. Often by the power of the state. Here was a chance to show that they are better, that they occupy a moral high ground. But a lot of the media representation that standing up for free speech is a far-right position creates a self-fulfilling prophecy wherein white identitarians, nationalists and so on, they turn up to these events because they believe that they're just for them, and they're happy to have their free speech but not for others to have theirs, in much the same way as the people that we constantly attack in this YouTube skeptic community, whatever you want to call it, want free speech for themselves but not for anyone else. It doesn't work like that. It's universalist. It's all or nothing, really, short of a few constrictions that we can all agree on, or at least the vast majority of us. The calling for violence is beyond the pale. But Ali Dawah should have been allowed to speak, and that would have sent a powerful message. His was one of few kind of dissenting or different voices that were really present. You had conservative speakers, and you had libertarian-ish speakers, people like Sargon, like Dankula, who don't agree with the far right but are happy to share a stand with them and express their support for free speech because, like me, who is very firmly on the left, they understand that this is universalist and needs to reach out to everyone. But speaking of these unwanted, uncomfortable speakers and the problems around even getting those kind of speakers, or speakers outside that point of view to speak, you only need to look at what happened to Vanity Von Glow. Now, Vanity Von Glow is one of London's most famous drag queens, which probably isn't saying that much, but yeah, she, in terms of the character at least, is a reasonably big deal, at least in London. And they went and they sang some numbers and so on, and this was picked up on in the press, and she was attacked massively by all sorts of people, most of whom just immediately blocked me when I tried to bring up similar points to the ones that I'm expressing now. That vanity was there was a good thing, and yet the price she's paying is venues are cancelling appearances and performances, a huge amount of hate over social media, and yet here was someone who was demonstrating that free expression is important to the LGBT community, that it is what has enabled it to get all the gains that it's had over the last century or so. This is an issue that crosses boundaries, and a lot of the identitarians and the kind of working class right who were present abandoned and went to the pub when Vanity Von Glow was performing. That made them uncomfortable, they didn't like it, and they went away, which again is kind of missing the point. But they expressed their discomfort and disgust on social media, and this is another aspect of the importance of free expression. These people expressed their hatred out in the open, where we could see it and where we can assess how we're going to react to them in the future. That is a valuable aspect of free speech, and Vanity is right. These communities, the trans community today, only thrives and gains ground because of free speech, and trying to shut down and eliminate that free speech, or at least the kind of speech that you don't like, is just going to be counterproductive. And giving free speech, free expression, means encountering uncomfortable things. The guys who went to the pub might be bigots, but that is the right thing to do when you encounter something you don't like. Rather than using the state or violence or whatever else to suppress it, remove yourself from its presence. Don't consume media, don't consume information, don't consume memes that you don't want to. How is that difficult? A few of them were more vicious than that. They're identitarians, and much more firmly on the right, believing that this isn't something that should be allowed, that this was somehow an infiltration of the event, and so on. This is the far right that people were talking about in the media, particularly The Guardian, but they're such a vanishingly small amount of the greater group or the goals of the event that playing them up is just dishonest, in the same way that Tommy Robinson's boosters playing up what supposedly happened around Ali Dawa is dishonest. It's the same problem from a different tack, and they're both playing the media spin game when what people need, what people want, is the truth. Dankula and Sargon spoke out against Ali Dawa's censoring, and I'm sure they would, or have spoken out about the response to Vanity Von Glow. Both of them spoke fairly eloquently about, I would fuck up when I'm talking about eloquence, spoke fairly eloquently about their issues and their position, and Dankula talked about how he doesn't support the far right. These two speakers, I think, best exemplify what this is supposed to be about, what it considers itself to be about. And the irony when it comes to Dankula being told that he's part of a far-right rally event is that he mocked the far-right, and his court case hinges on the idea that he doesn't get to determine the context or meaning or intent behind what he does. And the media have done the same thing to the march that he was a part of. You say it's for free speech, we're going to tell you it's a far-right event. At a free speech event, you should have people from all different walks of life and all different positions. That said, there was a lack of left-wing speakers, and I don't expect that you would get someone like, say, Owen Jones or whatever, to appear at and speak at an event like this. Partly because they think such events shouldn't happen. They don't really believe in free speech. You can watch Owen Jones's interview with the news guy. forgotten his name. Anyway, the comedian who pretends to be a newscaster between things. Jonathan Pye. It came to me. You can watch his interview with him to see that he doesn't really believe in free expression in the way that most of us do, or the way that most of us would formulate it. But even so, you know, we need left-wing speakers. But if the response that dissenting voices, that left-wing speakers, that LGBT speakers get when they do appear at these things is viciousness from their own people, their own side, how can we really expect them to go to these events and appear at them? Because the cost in terms of personal relationships, professional relationships, income and so on that Vanity Von Glow is now paying, you know, that is going to keep people away, even those who would otherwise be willing to speak. You know, if I had a higher profile, I'd do it. And if you want me on a stream as a token sane leftist, then do invite me. And if I'm well enough and have the time spare, I'll turn up and argue from the left position. But the fact is, I'm going to agree with a lot of free speech people and liberals and libertarians on a lot of things around the kind of culture wars that we've got. But that's because I'm on the left, not in spite of being on the left. But the effect of this hatred and vitriol and deplatforming and attacking people's careers and sources of income and so on, if they even dare appear at the same event with thousands and thousands of other people across the political spectrum, the effect that it has to attack them for even the slightest sympathy or what's seen as support or sharing a platform with someone, no wonder they don't show up. But then where are the left-wing free speech events? We cannot allow free speech to become a polarized political issue. Expression does not belong to the right, it doesn't belong to the left. Your fear of the rise of totalitarianism doesn't justify your use of totalitarian tactics to silence people. I believe in the arguments of the left, you know, the actual left. And I think we can reach people like Tommy Robinson, like the people who support Tommy Robinson, who are the traditional base of the left, the working class, the people who deserve a better chance, people who are being passed over in this current pseudo-left fixation on first world problems and the Guardian pages. We can reach them, but you have to try. And that's just not happening. Zang.